Hello everyone! Welcome to the Esoteric Software stream. My name is Erika, and in today's stream we will be continuing the project of the skins that we have started in the previous sessions. So it's an ongoing project that you can choose to follow along by downloading the material that you can find in the description of the video. This is the project. It already has several skins, although they are basically two main skins that were divided into several pieces. I like to color code the bones that I have here, so I'll do that. I would need to change the length of these to make it end around here. I'm creating the IK for the legs because the legs will need IKs. So to create an IK, I have to be in setup mode. Then I'll be selecting the two bones as I just did here. And then I'll choose new IK constraint. Then when I click on the bone itself, it creates a separate bone that will be the target. And I can call these foot front if I didn't already use this name. Okay, I did not. That's awesome. What happens if I do this? Oh, it moves in reverse. I have to go here, uncheck positive, and that makes my images move slightly. We kind of have a problem. Let me verify this thing again. What happens on this? Okay, this also bends in reverse. What happens if I uncheck positive here? It also moves slightly. So that means that I did not get this bone to point in the correct direction. So if you remember in the previous time, I did lots of work to ensure that these bones would rotate perfectly around their own pivot point, which means that I cannot move this second bone, but I can rotate the parent bone and get it to be instead in a position that will ensure that it is not bending in reverse like that. What happens if I just do this and I get this here? You know what? I'm going to be doing that. Okay, so I get rid of this bone, this imperfect bone, and I just move this bone to be right above it. Could do that. So I have this copy of this bone. I'm going to move it at the same height as this one, which was this height here. Okay, so I'm going to be pasting this here. So this is going to be leg front up, hip, okay. I'll delete this, I'll delete this, I'll parent this here, I'll parent this here. I'll rename this to the rightful name, leg front up. Where's the other one? Didn't I delete it? Ah, there it is, okay. 1 and 2 and new and IK constraint, and I click on these and I leave it as target. Did this move? No. Awesome. Okay, just to verify this. Okay, this still has positive. Okay, that's ugly. But if I uncheck it, it's gonna be fine. If I check stretch, everything is working as it should. This is the leg that I need. So now I'll fix this one that I had here and I'll get it to be similar to the other one. I'll do so by duplicating this leg. And I remove the insides of the leg. I remove the children of this leg. I'll call these, okay, like this again, because then I'll rename it. I'll parent these here. And I'm going to copy this number and paste it here. So they're at the same height. Okay, they were very similar once again. I'm going to copy the length that I have here because this worked on the other side, so it must work also here. Let's do that. And then I'm going to move the images here because now that bone is in the right spot. So see, they were very close, but just a little bit moved, and that was causing all the problems. So now I'm going to reparent here these to this. Okay, so I don't need to have that other bone anymore, and now I can just select these two, new IK constraint. I'll click here. I'll call this target 2 for now because I want to make sure first that it works. Okay, this is 0. it is perfect. It is working. Okay, now I have perfect legs. And I'm going to make sure that these bones are right once again. Are they identical or not? They are not. Somehow the placement was slightly different. I'm going to parent the contents here. Then I'm going to, let's see here, fruit back, parent here. Then I'm copying this name, fruit back, and deleting this bone. So here, this is going to be fruit back. And I rename this to fruit back. Okay. Then I select the name that I had here, which is foot front too. Okay, copying this. Okay, now I rename this to foot front. I rename the target to foot front. Happiness again. Okay, then I'll give this a length 334. Yes. Okay, so then I'll set the rotation here to 334 and the length to 123, so they are identical. Stretch, stretch. So, okay. I said that I wanted to create the bones for the face. This is good. I'm going to make this longer. Okay, so they overlap. I can also make this slightly longer so they overlap. Okay, there is no need to make the bones touch. The length of the bones, if they don't have IKs, is purely cosmetic. So the change now goes like this. I have the neck, I have the head, I have the bone that rotates the head on itself. Let's verify that this is still working nicely. Rotation. Yeah. Okay, I like this. Let's go and create the rest of the bones. So I'm in setup mode once again. I select this rotator bone because it needs to hold everything else. And I'll create this other bone over the nose because this is the face holder instead. So instead of face base rotator, I'll call this face holder. Okay, which is that magical bone that afterwards will help convey the 3D-ness of the face, but just for the features, it will hold all of the facial features for me. Okay, because I created this, now I can change the icon for this one. Like this. That was my rotator, that's a face holder. And I can start creating the bones for the other parts of the face. I selected this skin, the last skin that is active, to be able to click on the images. And at this point I can create a bone here for the mouth. For now I'm going to keep a bone that is just called mouth and leave it as it is. Okay, I actually want these bones to be at 0 degrees so I don't get the mouth like this. This to 0, and therefore also this one to 0, so they're all pointing towards me, these icons. Now I have to select the eye skin because if you remember I had all these various versions of the eyes. I have this face holder as the parent bone. I'm in create mode and I'm in setup so I can create the new bones. I will need to have a bone that holds the entirety of the eye, and I guess that I'll make it here. Then this bone, I like to orient it like the corner of the eye and where this ends, but considering the fact that this eye is going to have different shapes, maybe I'm not going to be doing that, and instead I'm gonna leave it as it is in the middle of this. Yeah. Okay, so what's the middle? I guess that this is going to be the middle of it. I'm going to create a bone for the pupil that also parents the iris to this. So here, okay, and it's called pupil and it already has the iris and pupil parented to it. So from here, I can reselect the bone of the eye white and I'll select the top and I'll create a bone that can open and close this, for which I'll use this icon like this because it's gonna be open and closes. And then I'll do the same here and change the icon, and perfect. Then I'll change this to an icon that looks like an eye and this to an icon that looks like a star. As a child of face holder, I'm going to create the control for these. Okay, I'll keep it in a neutral 0 degrees, I think. Why create the bone at the tip of the eyebrow instead of in the center to be able to rotate like a normal eyebrow? Oh, so you usually create it in the middle. Okay, this part usually does not move, but it's this middle part that moves. So you can do this. You prefer to have it more in the middle? Let's try that. Usually I have to rig like the realistic characters, and this works very nicely for that. So what happens if I move it in the middle? And you do it like this. But this part is not supposed to move, is it? Let me look at my eyebrows. Yeah, see, this part is basically not moving, so it makes sense to move this the inside more rather than the outside. Let me just reburn the eye reflection, the eyelid top, okay, which was not visible until now. These are going to be used to mask part of the eye. The only problem they have is that they should actually have their own skin, so that you can combine, tint them and combine them together with the rest, but I should separate them, which I don't particularly want to do. Let's get these two open and close first, and then I'll maybe add the eye feature so that it can retain the eye inside. Because maybe I can do it without using that, but I already prepared the images in case I might need to have those. I'm in animate mode because usually what I like to do for these tests is to create Eyeblink animation where I make the eye open and close. I already did this exact process also on the Celestial Circus project. I'm going to close the eyes. Okay, usually I want it to reach. This is where it ends. This is where the eye actually closes. So if this is the usual placement, this is where the eye should close in a normal position, which if you think about it, it's very proportional also in the human eye. I feel like the open portion is usually 2/3 and 1/3 is the lower part, and that's where it closes. It's not like it closes exactly in the middle here. So this is like 2/3 and this is 1/3. Works nicely in closing and opening the eye. Okay, Giuliano is confirming. That's great. It was like my observation, but I wasn't sure. I close here. Okay, so they overlap, and then I'll get all of these parts to be connected. So I break them so that then they can be restored. Then I'm moving all of these keys. Okay, so you also can see on frame of 10 or something, maybe 10, yeah. And I click this key here to create the missing keys. Copy these, paste here, apply curves. Okay, maybe exaggerate them a little bit so they do, okay, the blinking. Okay, so they go very fast and then slow down a little and do this sort of movement. And I need to create the meshes. Now this will be the very first meshes that I create in the entire project. So it's very funny that I start from the eye because I usually don't. I'm going to start from this top part here. And okay, let's attempt tracing. Yeah, I guess I can use tracing, but as usual, I have to modify the structure a little bit. Why? If we take the what is output from the tracing right as it is, then the polygons are not gonna be suited for opening and closing. We need, for example, to have a vertex. Let's not isolate the part. Okay, a vertex that needs to be able to be anchored where it is or go lower, and same on this side where there's even two. I think I'll move this here. Then, if there's a vertex at this height, it makes sense to have another one on the other side, so that then I can move both, assigning to both the same weight. If they're in a zigzag, this process is made harder. So I want them proportional like this. Okay, maybe even evenly distanced. There are many triangles that are closing on this vertex, so I might need to add more. I'll try to start with less vertices, and then if I see that it's kind of looking ugly, I'll add more. Okay, now I have the vertices for my mesh. I'm going to open the weights panel. Let's close the skins for now. I'm going to bind this mesh in setup mode. This is very important. Never bind these meshes that you're creating at the start in animate mode. We do that for advanced setups like adding new poses to our already created characters, but otherwise we want them generally bound in setup. Bind. I select this bone and I select the eye, okay, that eye bone that I created earlier. I will need to have something similar also here on this side. Binding in animate mode, yeah, it's considered a capital sin. That is very true, Giuliano. I'll check a mesh for this and bind it. And I'll bind also these two. Now, see, this mesh, I didn't even put any effort in this one. I just left it as it is, because it's gonna be easier to weight this way. I already have the extremes that are all weighted on the bone that is opening and closing, which is causing this. Now, to get it to instead do the nice bending, I'm going to be changing the weights on these. Okay, the easiest thing is to find out which is the part of the eye that is for sure not gonna move. And I think it's going to be these two here, which I want to not move and stay on the eye white. Okay, then I'll go in the version of the eye where it's completely closed, and I have to basically reconstruct the rest of the eye. Okay, so for example, here I'll get them to be more like this, and I select them in groups, in this case of 2. Okay, this I need to have an extreme, so I think I'll leave it as it was. Here, maybe like this. Then here I'll get it to be like this. This area needs for sure to be 100%, and then I'll get this to more or less do this. Okay, now here there's a big mess that is happening, so for now I'll just look at it, and as you see, it's already doing a little bit better. But because this eye is very curved, I will necessarily need to add more vertices here to take control of the curve. Now, if you remember, the rule that I keep repeating about curves is that we have 2 ways of dealing with curves. One is pretending they do not exist, which I attempted to do. The second is to add a lot of vertices, which is the case that we need here because we need to tame the curve. Okay, the alternative could be to remove this vertex. Can I remove it? Okay, let's try first to remove it, and then if it looks ugly, I am going to add more in an attempt of doing less work. Well, that's actually... So before it was like this, and now it's like this. It's the only problem is that we lose mass. So I think I'm gonna go with the other way anyway, where I add a bit more vertices. So here is one more vertex. The closer we get, the less artifacts we will have, so it would be a good idea to have more of those. I'm going to lower these. Okay, and now I have more or less a straight line. It's closing like this. Now I'll have to repair here what was happening. Okay, to rejoin this part. Okay, this means the fact that this is not touching there means that this will likely stay there. What I like to do in this case is actually weight this bottom part here so it gets higher up, so it aligns with the lacrimal duct on this side, because on this side I feel like it's fine. On this side it's a bit too low. Yeah, and there's also the fact that here these things were happening. What I like to do when there's a ton of parts that are overlapping and I'm not sure what is happening is just to press the smooth button and see what spine average is for me. Oh yes. Yeah, no. Okay, let's increase a little bit how fixed this is. Let's see it now. Okay, this is too strong. Okay, until it's stained. Here, I'm going to be doing this on the lower part of the eye. Let's trace it. Ah, I was wondering, what is this? It looks like I did like one stroke, so it created some extra vertices there, which I don't actually need. Okay, I'm gonna accept this, but then I'm gonna modify this a lot. I'll modify this so it's here. Okay, I'm going to keep it this way. And I'll create an extra vertex here. Okay, hopefully this is enough. I'll bind this to the bottom and to the eye white. Then I'll stop where it is closed. And I'll just reconstruct the eye until it looks like an eye that is closed. Here and here, more or less, they should be anchored to the bottom. Or like this, because they are actually not touching that place. I guess that I could move this down a little bit higher up, okay, without compensation on, so it is closed, nicely closed. Because the lower part is meeting in the middle at that height, this needs to also move higher up, so I'll have to get it to move higher up like this. Now when it blinks, it's doing this, which looks nice. some people like to weight the white and the pupil as well. I'm not gonna be doing that. Here's where the parts that I hid before, so these ones, which I'm gonna parent under the eye. I'm going to have to also weight this one, so I'm gonna turn this into a mesh, bind it, and make it follow this and this. Modify, I'm going to be creating here, here, here. Okay, I just added a couple of vertices so I can get it to follow a little bit the shape. Let's pretend that we're at runtime and we get this attachment to have the same color as the skin color that I have here. So let me reopen the skins. This color here is this. I'm gonna copy it, then I'm gonna get rid of it because ultimately at runtime this is not necessary, of course, because it can be tinted on the fly, or we can make our own variations depending on the character, that too. I'm going to paste. Okay, let's say that this is the eye that can match with that here and here, so it matches the rest, and it's gonna be hiding the eye so it never goes outside, but more importantly also making it possible to blink the eye without having to squash parts, which I could not do on the spine boy that I did previously, the spine boy in a snow globe. So here I'll create a mesh for these. Can I have something symmetrical? Please, no? Okay. I'll close here. I'll just edit it myself. I'll move this up. Okay, if I isolate it, it's gonna be easier. Okay, so this is one of those cases where if I leave these big gaps without any vertex close to it, I'm going to have some horrible deforming happening. I'll just demonstrate. Okay, let's pretend that this is our mesh. And I'll bind these two as well as these. Okay, so it can follow the opening and the closing. Okay, the way to rig this, to weight this mesh is very simple. We just get, basically most of the mesh needs to stay in place like this. And we get this middle part to be 100% on this bone so it can close. The problem, where you remember that we had this big gap. Now, when it goes in closing position, the big gap gets distorted, and so you can see the big gap when it's closed. So that's the reason why here we need to be adding some vertices that can get closer like this. Then if we just have these vertices like this, we may still have this part of the mesh distorting a lot, and in fact it is distorting. So actually we fix the problem like this, so it may be good enough. But if for some reason maybe you're applying makeup on your character with these and you don't want this part to distort so much, you will need to also add a couple of vertices that take the triangles from here so that the top part is not being distorted. So now instead of having them move like this, you apply 100% of eye white, and now it's perfect. And that's how you can rig these eyes. So see here it's moving a little bit, and it's because it's connected to that. So if you add a couple more vertices to pad this part, it's gonna be fine. How weird. Why is this eye the one? Don't tell me. I did partially part of these with one mesh and the other one with the other. Okay, it's time to create a linked mesh then. So remember when I was explaining how linked mesh work? So what happened is that I had multiple copies of this eye round, and I already did a mesh. Now, these meshes are all copies, they were just recolored. Wouldn't it be nice if I didn't have to do the same work twice and I could just reuse this mesh? Well, I could just duplicate that. But what if I then need to do a change on this mesh afterwards in the weights? Then I have to do the same change on all the copies. With a linked mesh, that is not necessary, as I can just change one mesh and all this change is propagated to every other mesh. So I need to use this eye round as the source mesh. So that means that we need Soren's eye. Okay, now I can see all the skin attachments, and I can go where I have this one and I'll move it here in the other skin I'll disable these other colors. Okay, and this is how it should look like. Okay, that's my eye round. And I need to create a linked mesh from this one. So I'll choose new linked mesh, and that creates a copy that I can very quickly move in the other skins. How do I do that? I need to activate the skin like here, and then I can move it under the skin placeholder. So now I have the copy there. I can make a third copy for these. I just need another duplicate. They can be called all the same. So in fact, they have exactly the same name. And I'll move it there. Okay, now I have 3 copies. I'll also remove the tint from this version that is untinted of the eye. Perhaps I'll keep this copy for the runtime tinting, and this is a copy that I just keep already tinted in some colors to have the combinations that I would like. I need to have this also as a linked mesh. The last lower eyelid part is what we're gonna be doing. I can do it here and then move it, propagate it to the other skins. I'll check mesh for this, edit the mesh, let's try tracing. Okay, I'll accept it and then I'll modify it. Okay, first I'll have it like this. I'll move this here, create a couple more vertices, especially here in the middle, so that this can deform in a bit of a nicer way without the ugly artifacts. Accepting the change, binding this to these 2 bones. We can go to animate mode, where we see that it's doing this. Okay, I actually will need for sure these to be completely on eye white, and then I'll stop once again at the closed version of the eye to create the eyelid that is folding. I want this part to be absolutely anchored to the ground, same for this. So it's only the part in the middle that is going up. And I see that I have the same problem as before, where this is deforming and revealing that part, because this part is a bit more subtle, it's more visible. And so it's already time to show you that double border that I was talking about. So we have to have a second line of vertices here. And then when I go and edit this, okay, in the closed version, I just have to raise the influence. And then this double border is not as visible anymore. Okay, this is fine. This, less fine. Okay, I need to also change this mesh. And as you see, because this is a linked mesh, I have to switch the mesh and then I can add. Okay, here I had this problem. I'm going to add a vertex here and I guess also here for the double border. Then when I go here, I can change the weights. So that is, okay, it's doing this. Because that one is connecting, it's doing ugly stuff. Like this, it's not doing that ugly stuff anymore. This is fixed. I want to go back to this skin. I am seeing that I did some more mistakes. I think that this here, I should change the images because there's a little bit of artifact. It's a bit translucent, and so I have to make sure that there's no little gaps here. Okay, what I could do to improve this could just be, I can see that this is higher up than the other, so I could get the weights to match on this. So because that's not gonna change, then it means that I have to change these 2 instead. So I'll select these 2 and get them to be a tad lower. Okay, and I got a more precise version, but I changed one vertex here too much, so now I have to fix it. Okay. Okay, that's my eye. I could add more vertices in the middle to have a straight line instead of a curving line. So I'm going to go to my source mesh and I'll edit this mesh, which I'm not seeing. Okay, I'll create here the 1, 2, interesting, eye round. I'm modifying eye round, but I'm seeing eye round A. Did I pin it? Or maybe I pinned one of them, I don't know. Okay, I'll add a couple more here, modify, get them closer. And animate mode again, and now it's a bit smoother. Earlier it was like this, and then afterwards it became more like this, but it means that I can get this to be a bit lower and this to be also a bit lower, and then this also needs to have a few more vertices if I want this to work. So I will need at least a couple of them here, but it is in any case a good idea to start with less vertices, because then you already have an idea when you have less of what it should be. Okay, let's see now. Yes, I'm happy with it. To make a realistic blinking, something that I was keeping as a beginner was to also make this eyebrow to lower and okay, so I need to translate it down and rotate it a little bit, maybe like this. Then I'll key the position here and also at the end, and this in theory makes it a little bit more realistic. Okay, and then it looks like this, and it's a nice eye blink. The eyelid shadow also needs to be weighted, so I'll bind it. I want it to follow, yeah. Okay, I'll also bind the eyelid shadow, and then I'll complete this. So it is bound. Then when it is closing, I just have to change the weights here so it follows. Okay, so the shadow moves also with the rest. Okay, so I'll create the linked meshes for all these parts. It could also have the eye moving. I saw some of these videos where you see that the eye actually goes up when you open and close the eye. So this then goes pushed down. Ugh. Okay, that's too fast. So I'll make the eye blink a little bit slower. Okay, this completes this eye. In this session, we basically rigged an eye that does this. And we got the legs to also be a lot nicer, so they can bend without popping, etc. I will see you next time, next Tuesday, to continue on this project bit by bit. So we did something very simple today. If you have any requests about things that you would like to see on stream, about rigs that you find difficult, or anything, feel free to leave a comment about that. Thank you for watching.